At 12:18 a.m., my husband told me to stop making a scene because his ex-girlfriend had had a hard day too. She was curled beneath my gray throw blanket on my sofa, barefoot, wearing one of his college sweatshirts, while he sat close enough that their knees disappeared under the same fold of fleece. I stood in the doorway with rain running off my hair, a sack of groceries cutting into my wrist, and 10 hours of warehouse dust still trapped in the lines of my hands. "If you're going to start," Eric said, without getting up, "at least make it quick. Vanessa's exhausted." For a second, I honestly wondered whether I had opened the wrong apartment. The lock on our front door always swelled when it rained. I had shouldered it twice to get inside, expecting darkness, a hot shower, and whatever soup was left in the refrigerator. Instead, our living room glowed blue from Eric's phone. He and Vanessa had been laughing at something on the screen. When the door struck the wall, she looked up with the tiny, careful smile she used whenever she wanted cruelty to pass for innocence. "Long shift, Claire?" she asked. The gallon of milk almost slipped out of my hand. "Why are you still here after midnight?" I asked. "And why are you under our blanket?" I did not shout. I did not throw anything. I asked 2 questions in my own home. But in my marriage, any question from me was treated as a greater offense than whatever Eric had done to provoke it. He rolled his eyes. "Here we go again." We were watching old videos. Vanessa slowly pulled the blanket off her legs, but left Eric's sweatshirt on. "Maybe if you trusted your husband, you'd sleep better." I set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter hard enough to make a jar of pasta sauce wobble. "Maybe if my husband acted married, I would." Silence held for half a breath. Then Eric stood and turned on me with the weary expression of a man being asked to clean up a mess someone else had made. "You make this apartment miserable," he said. Miserable. Jealous. Insecure. Dramatic. Those were his favorite names for me. Never tired. Never humiliated. Never lonely in my own home. I walked to the bathroom because anger had filled my mouth with words I could not take back. Behind the locked door, I peeled off my wet work shirt and watched my hands shake. I could hear them speaking softly in the living room. Once, Vanessa laughed. Eric shushed her, but he was laughing, too. That night I slept alone. He remained on the sofa until she left, as if I were the intruder who had interrupted their evening. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 34 years old, and I had been married to Eric Bennett for 6 years. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment outside Columbus, Ohio, where the upstairs plumbing clicked at night and the kitchen window faced a brick wall. I worked at a building supply warehouse, coordinating contractor orders and doing whatever else needed doing when somebody called out. Eric sold appliances at a regional showroom and possessed the kind of easy charm that made strangers remember his name. From the outside, we looked ordinary. My mother in Dayton thought Eric was thoughtful because he never forgot to send birthday texts in the family group chat. Our neighbors saw him carry groceries when people were watching. At holiday dinners, he refilled my water glass before I asked. Nobody saw how he could make a room feel smaller with one sigh. Vanessa Hale had returned to his life 14 months earlier. He introduced her as his childhood best friend, practically a sister. She had recently moved back after a broken engagement in Arizona, and according to Eric, she knew almost no one in Ohio anymore. The first time she joined us for dinner, she brought wine and a bakery pie. She was attractive in an effortless way, dark blonde hair, green eyes, a soft voice that made every insult sound like concern. She told funny stories about Eric in high school. Stories that placed her beside him in every important memory. I smiled because I wanted to be generous. 3 weeks later, while looking for a photograph for Eric's father's retirement slideshow, I found a box of old pictures in our hall closet. Eric and Vanessa at prom. Eric kissing her forehead at a county fair. Vanessa wearing his varsity jacket. One picture showed them kissing in a dorm hallway while someone off camera held up a handwritten sign that said "finally." When I asked why he had called his ex-girlfriend a sister, he did not apologize. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd act like this." He had hidden the truth because he predicted that discovering a hidden truth would hurt me. That logic became the cage he kept me in. Over the following months, Vanessa entered every corner of our life. She joined our Sunday breakfasts and chose the restaurants. She commented on vacation pictures as if she had stood behind the camera. Eric canceled a concert with me because she was having a rough night. When I objected, I was jealous. When I stayed quiet, they moved another inch closer. She kept a phone charger in our kitchen. A bottle of her preferred sparkling water appeared in the refrigerator. Once, I came home and found her rearranging my spice cabinet because Eric had mentioned that my system was confusing. She laughed when I asked her to stop. "I'm just helping," she said. "You work so much." Eric leaned against the counter, smiling. "See? She appreciates what I deal with." The sentence was small enough to deny later and sharp enough to bleed. I did work too much. The warehouse had lost 2 coordinators, and I was covering deliveries, contractor disputes, and inventory reports for the same salary. I left before sunrise some mornings and came home with my shoulders knotted. Eric complained that I smelled like lumber dust. Vanessa, who worked remotely for a marketing agency, arrived looking polished and rested, carrying coffee for him but never for me. I began to feel as though I was financing a home where another woman auditioned for my role. One Friday, Eric did not come home. At 10 p.m., he texted that he was out with friends. At 2 a.m., he stopped answering. He returned at 7:06 the next morning smelling of beer, mint gum, and a floral detergent we did not use. "I didn't want to wake you," he said. "Where did you sleep?" He set his keys down very carefully. "Vanessa's. On the couch." Then I asked the saddest question a wife can ask. "Did anything happen?" He became offended. He did not become sorry. He became offended. "You really think that little of me?" Something inside me finally grew tired of asking permission to believe my own eyes. I listed the late messages, the cancelled plans, the secret history, the nights she occupied my sofa while he defended her faster than he had ever defended me. My voice rose. Doors opened along the hallway. Eric lowered his voice only when he realized the neighbors could hear. That was the first useful truth I learned. Eric's shame existed only in public. For the next week, he performed remorse without changing anything. He bought flowers from the grocery store and left the price sticker on. He made dinner once, then complained that I had not praised him. He promised boundaries, but Vanessa's name still lit his screen after midnight. Then he offered to buy me a dress so we could reset. At the mall, he chose a dark green wrap dress that cost more than I would normally spend. I went into the fitting room. When I stepped out, Eric was holding his phone at chest height, laughing on a video call. Vanessa's face filled the screen. "Turn around," Eric told me. "She says the waist looks weird." I froze beneath the fluorescent lights. Vanessa tilted her head, studying my body as if she had been invited into my skin. "Green washes her out," she said. "You should have picked the red one." Eric smiled. "That's what I said." I changed back into my work jeans, folded the dress, placed it in his arms, and walked out of the store. He followed me through the mall demanding to know why I had ruined a nice gesture. That evening, I received a message from Daniel Ruiz, a vendor representative who visited our warehouse twice a week. He had helped me jumpstart my car the month before and never made me feel indebted for it. "You look tired of being called crazy for noticing the obvious," he wrote. I read that sentence 6 times. Daniel did not ask me to meet him. He did not flirt. He simply named my pain without asking me to prove it. That frightened me more than Eric's anger, because I had forgotten what respect sounded like when it did not arrive carrying a demand. At work, Daniel began leaving an extra coffee near my terminal when our schedules overlapped. He recommended an honest mechanic when my alternator failed. If I talked, he listened. If I stopped, he did not fill the silence with advice. He never touched my shoulder in that presumptuous way some men do when they want credit for being gentle. Eric noticed his name on a vendor email and became instantly suspicious. "Who is Daniel?" "A supplier rep." "Why does he know your car broke down?" "Because it broke down in the parking lot." Eric began checking when I left work, who I ate lunch with, and why a shift had run late. After months of insisting that trust meant accepting whatever he did, he suddenly discovered that boundaries mattered when they might protect him. I started keeping notes in a password-protected file on my phone. Dates. Comments. Nights Vanessa stayed late. Money transferred from our joint account. I did not yet know what I planned to do with the record. I only knew I needed proof that my memory belonged to me. The final humiliation arrived at an Italian restaurant downtown. Eric reserved a table by the window, ordered my favorite wine, and spoke in the soft voice he used when he wanted credit for choosing not to yell. I agreed to go because I needed to know which version of him would appear, the charming husband, the repentant husband, or the angry husband pretending to be calm. 20 minutes after we sat down, Vanessa walked through the front door. She did not glance around in surprise. She came directly to our table wearing the dark green wrap dress Eric had offered to buy me. The room seemed to tilt. "What a coincidence," she said. I looked at the dress, then at Eric. "You gave it to her?" His eyes dropped to his plate. "You didn't want it." Vanessa smoothed the fabric over her hip. "Don't be dramatic, Claire. It's just clothing." "No," I said. "It's the place you've spent a year trying to take." Conversation at the next table stopped. A waiter paused with a water pitcher. My heart struck my throat, but for once I did not swallow the humiliation to protect the person causing it. "Are you in love with my husband?" I asked. Vanessa gave a breathy laugh. "If you were secure in your marriage, you wouldn't have to ask." Eric hissed my name as a warning. I texted Daniel under the table, "I know this is ridiculous, but can you come for 10 minutes? I need not to be alone." He arrived 22 minutes later in a navy work jacket, rain still shining on the shoulders. He did not place a possessive hand on me. He did not challenge Eric. He pulled out the empty chair beside mine and asked, "Are you safe?" Eric shot to his feet. "Who the hell is this?" "Someone who understands not to enter a relationship where." "He wasn't invited," I said. The comparison hit Eric harder than shouting would have. In front of witnesses, he could see what I had been seeing in private. Another man could keep a respectful distance without needing a woman to beg for it. I left with Daniel and drank coffee at a diner across the street. I posted a picture of the mug, no faces, no caption, because part of me needed evidence that the night had not swallowed me whole. Eric called 9 times. "You're humiliating me," he said when I finally answered. After everything, the image that concerned him was a photograph of coffee. When I returned home, he waited in the kitchen with both hands braced on the counter. "Are you sleeping with him?" The emotion that rose in me was no longer jealousy. It was contempt, cold and clear. "No. But it's interesting that your mind went there so quickly." We argued until 3 a.m. He repeated that he and Vanessa had never crossed that line. I told him it no longer mattered whether he had crossed one line while spending a year dancing on every other one. The next week, Eric came to my workplace. Thursday was our heaviest delivery day. Forklifts beeped in the loading lanes, contractors crowded the service desk, and I was correcting a $9,400 order when I heard my name echo down the concrete aisle. Eric strode toward me, red-faced and loud. "Can we talk?" "Not here." "Or do you need your boyfriend's permission?" The warehouse went quiet in expanding circles. Cashiers looked up. 2 drivers stopped rolling a pallet. Daniel stood near the contractor entrance with a clipboard, but did not come closer. Eric announced that I was destroying our marriage over an innocent friendship. He said he had loved me, supported me, tolerated my moods. He said Vanessa had been part of his life before I was. That last sentence revealed the truth. He was not there to repair anything. He had come to reclaim control of the story in front of witnesses. I removed my employee badge and set it on the counter so it would stop trembling against my chest. "I want a divorce." Eric went white. "You don't mean that." "I have never meant anything more. I want out of a life where I have to doubt myself so you can look like a good man." Even the customer beside me stopped examining his receipt. Daniel spoke quietly from several yards away. "Do you want me to stay until you close?" "Yes," I said. That yes was small, but it returned something Eric had taken from me, the right to need support without apologizing. That night, I placed Eric's clothes in contractor bags beside the sofa. When he came in and saw them, he stared as though he had found a body. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm ending it." First came his apology phase. He cried on the sofa and said he had not realized how things looked. He claimed nothing physical had happened. He called me the love of his life and Vanessa a mistake in judgment. Then came his fear phase. He listed the rent, the utilities, the furniture, the difficulty of separating 6 years of belongings. He asked who would keep the television, as if a 55-inch screen might save our marriage. Finally came rage. "You just wanted an excuse to leave me for him." "No," I said. "You gave me hundreds of reasons. I finally chose an exit." He refused to leave that night, so I slept with the bedroom door locked and a chair beneath the handle. At 4 a.m., I heard him moving through the living room. In the morning, the gray throw blanket was gone. So was the folder containing our lease, tax returns, and bank statements. When I called him, he said he had taken only his personal documents. I checked our account. During the previous 3 months, $7,800 had disappeared in transfers I had never noticed, each labeled with vague words like repair, loan, or card payment. My fear sharpened into purpose. I opened the notes on my phone and began building a timeline. Eric's parents arrived 3 days later. His mother, Linda, wore concern over judgment the way she wore foundation over sun damage, carefully, but not invisibly. She told me marriage was difficult, men could be clumsy with feelings, and I should not throw away years over misunderstandings. I told the story in order. The blanket. The messages. His night at Vanessa's apartment. The dress. The restaurant. The scene at work. The missing documents. The transfers. His father, Frank, covered his face with one hand. I asked him more than once what game he was playing, he murmured. That was the first reversal. His family had not been blind. They had simply preferred silence while I paid for it. Linda stared at him. "You knew?" "I knew enough." "And you said nothing to me?" Frank looked at me, ashamed. "Eric asked me for money in June. Said Vanessa was in trouble. I told him no. I should have called you." The room became very still. "How much did he ask for?" I said. 10,000. Linda began to cry. A marriage can survive a lot if both people want it. Then Eric should have thought about that before inviting another woman to occupy my place every day. Nobody answered. Eric moved into Vanessa's apartment that week. He wanted me to know. He sent a message saying at least she did not punish him for being human. I took a screenshot and sent it to my attorney. My attorney's name was Priya Shah. She had kind eyes and the impatient precision of someone who had watched too many people destroy themselves in writing. Reply less, she told me. Save more. It became the best advice I received that year. I saved messages, dates, account statements, photographs, and copies of every bill. I changed my direct deposit. I froze the joint credit line. I asked our property manager for the security camera log from the night Eric took the documents. I was not preparing revenge. I was building a floor beneath my feet. The separation was ugly in ordinary ways. We argued about a dining table his mother had given us, a television I had mostly paid for, and which one of us owned the better blender. Eric delayed forms because every delay forced me to respond. He sent food to my door, then asked why I had not thanked him. He texted my mother childhood pictures of us from happier years. My mother initially remained quiet because she feared saying the wrong thing. Eric interpreted her silence as an opening. He called her and described me as unstable. She listened for 8 minutes, then said, "My daughter is not crazy. She is tired." She hung up and called me immediately. I cried harder over that sentence than I had over the dress. Daniel stayed present, but slowly. He never called Eric names. He helped me carry a replacement bookshelf upstairs and left before dark. When I canceled dinner because I was overwhelmed, he said, another day, without punishment hiding beneath the words. One Sunday, we cooked at his apartment. I was chopping peppers when I asked the question that had been circling me for weeks. What if I'm confusing kindness with safety because I've been starving for both? Daniel set down the knife and turned off the burner. Then we go slowly until you can tell the difference. No grand promise. No claim on my future. Just pace. That was respect. 2 weeks after moving in with Vanessa, Eric appeared at my door looking hollow. She used me, he said. I kept the chain latched. Why are you telling me? She liked the attention. She never wanted anything serious. He spoke for 20 minutes through a 3-inch opening. Vanessa had mocked him to a friend, calling him needy. She had told him I had been too patient and that she could never live with a man who complained so much. He had expected the fantasy to reward him once I stepped aside. Instead, without me as the jealous obstacle, their chemistry collapsed beneath groceries, rent, laundry, and his need to be reassured. He wanted comfort. He wanted me to become his emotional home again. I'm sorry about your ego, I said. But I'm not the person for this conversation. I closed the door. That was the second reversal. Vanessa had never wanted my husband. She had wanted proof she could take him. But the larger truth arrived 4 days later. Priya called while I was standing in the warehouse break room. Claire, did you authorize a $6,200 payment to Hale Creative Consulting? My stomach tightened. No, that company belongs to Vanessa. The transfers were not loans to help a struggling friend. Vanessa had created invoices for marketing services supposedly provided to Eric's showroom. Eric had pushed them through using a manager's login, then covered the timing by moving money from our joint savings to pay down the credit card he used for gifts, dinners, and a weekend trip. The floral detergent on his shirt that morning had not come from a sofa blanket. A hotel charge outside Cincinnati appeared on the same card. He had lied about the affair. He had lied about the money. He had lied at work. And now there was evidence independent of my memory. Priya advised me to say nothing while she subpoenaed complete records. The showroom's owner, a woman named Marlene Foster, contacted me after discovering irregular invoices in an internal audit. I expected embarrassment. Instead, she apologized. Eric told us you handled the household books, she said. He suggested you had mixed up personal and company spending. There it was again. When cornered, he had reached for my sanity as a shield. I sent Marlene the account timeline. Her company lawyer took over from there. For 17 days, I went to work, came home, watered the basil on my windowsill, and answered Eric only through Priya. He sent messages accusing me of cruelty. Then he sent apologies. Then he warned that I would regret trying to ruin him. I did not tell him that his own records had already done that. The third reversal came at our settlement conference. Eric arrived in a charcoal suit with Linda beside him. He looked polished, almost handsome, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed the truth could still be negotiated. His attorney opened by claiming that our finances were too entangled to assign fault and that I had abandoned the marriage for another man. Priya slid a binder across the table. Inside were the transfers, the fake invoices, the hotel charge, the security footage of Eric removing our records, and screenshots of him admitting that he lived with Vanessa. There was also an email from Vanessa, sent to protect herself after Marlene's lawyer contacted her. She stated that Eric had designed the invoice arrangement and promised that his wife would never notice because she was bad with money and easy to confuse. I watched him read his own contempt in someone else's words. His face lost color. Vanessa wrote this, he whispered. This meeting is not about Vanessa's loyalty, Priya said. It is about your client's conduct. Linda turned toward her son. You told me Claire was imagining things. Eric's jaw moved, but nothing came out. The showroom had terminated him that morning. They did not pursue criminal charges after he signed a restitution agreement, but the amount he owed erased most of his claim to our shared savings. Priya negotiated that I would keep my retirement contributions, my car, and the apartment lease. Eric took the television, the dining table, and the debt attached to his secret life. It was not cinematic justice. Nobody applauded. The fluorescent conference room smelled like burnt coffee. I signed my name 14 times and felt mostly hungry. Outside, Eric caught up with me near the elevators. You planned this, he said. For once, he looked afraid of me. No, irrablia. I documented what you planned. He glanced toward Daniel, who waited at the far end of the lobby because I had asked him to drive me home. Daniel did not approach. He understood that the confrontation belonged to me. You're enjoying this, Eric said. I searched myself and found no triumph, only steadiness. I'm enjoying not having to doubt what I know. The elevator opened. I stepped inside and let the doors close on him. For a while, I expected freedom to feel louder. I imagined music, sunlight, some unmistakable signal that the universe approved. Instead, after signing the final decree 2 months later, I bought French fries at a drive-thru and cried in the parking lot with a ketchup packet in my hand. Ending a life did not feel like victory. It felt like carrying buckets out of a flooded house. Healing arrived through ordinary evidence. I slept through the night. I stopped checking the clock when someone was late. I painted the living room a clean pale blue and bought a new throw blanket, rust-colored and entirely mine. I moved the spice rack back where I liked it. Daniel and I continued slowly. Our first real date happened 5 months after I filed. We went to a minor league baseball game, ate terrible nachos, and talked through 3 innings because neither of us cared about the score. When he kissed me beside my car, he asked first. The question nearly broke my heart. Not because asking was extraordinary, but because I had lived so long with a man who treated permission as an insult. I began therapy through an employee program at work. My counselor helped me understand that I had not stayed because I was weak. I had stayed because each wound had been small enough to explain away, and because Eric alternated contempt with charm so skillfully that I kept waiting for the kind version to become permanent. At the warehouse, my manager promoted me to operations supervisor after I rebuilt a vendor tracking system that cut order errors by 18%. The first time my team gathered around the conference table and waited for me to speak, I felt the old instinct to soften every sentence. Then I remembered how expensive it had been to make myself small. I gave clear instructions. Nobody called me difficult. The work simply got done. Vanessa tried to contact me once. Her email subject line said woman to woman. I almost deleted it, then forwarded it to Priya without opening it. Whatever explanation waited inside was designed to move responsibility from her shoulders onto mine. I no longer volunteered to carry other people's weight. The hardest part of leaving was not missing Eric. It was discovering how much of my daily life had been organized around anticipating him. For years, I had listened for his key in the lock and used the sound to measure his mood. A quick scrape meant he was irritated. A pause before the door opened meant he was composing a version of the evening. If he whistled, he wanted praise for being pleasant. After he moved out, I still lowered the television at 6:30 and checked whether dinner would survive another hour in the oven. One evening, I caught myself setting out 2 plates. I stood at the kitchen counter with 1 plate in each hand and began laughing. The laughter turned into tears so quickly I could not tell where one ended and the other began. I put the second plate away, ate scrambled eggs for dinner, and watched a documentary Eric would have mocked. Freedom was not one emotion. It was grief, relief, terror, anger, and absurd little choices arriving in the same body. The financial investigation stretched through the winter. Marlene's company attorney sent Priya copies of emails Eric had written from his work account. In one, he described me as too buried in warehouse nonsense to notice accounting. In another, he promised Vanessa that the consulting arrangement would give them enough money for our restart. The email was dated 5 months before the restaurant. Our restart. That phrase hurt more than the hotel receipt. It meant the future he had accused me of inventing had already been given a name. While I was comparing grocery prices and postponing dental work, Eric had been using our savings to rehearse a life with someone else. Priya warned me that proving emotional betrayal did not automatically change the legal division of property in Ohio. The money mattered because it was marital waste and because some of it involved his employer. She kept pulling me back from the moral trial I wanted into the legal case I could win. The court cannot make him admit what he did to your mind, she said. It can stop him from charging you for what he did with your money. I wrote the sentence in my phone. Eric's attorney demanded access to my messages with Daniel. Priya asked whether there was anything romantic from before the separation. No, anything they can crop to look romantic? I thought of the message about being called crazy, the coffee picture, Daniel asking whether I was safe. Probably. She nodded. Context is expensive. Assume they will remove it. I hated the idea of Eric turning decency into evidence against me, but Daniel agreed to preserve the full conversation. He did not delete an awkward joke or edit a timestamp. The messages showed months of restraint, his repeated invitations to include coworkers, my disclosures about the marriage, his insistence that I make decisions for myself. When Eric's lawyer finally reviewed them, the accusation collapsed. Daniel had behaved with more respect toward my marriage than my husband had. Eric reacted by changing tactics. He called my supervisor and claimed Daniel's vendor relationship created a conflict of interest. My supervisor, Gail, brought me into her office and closed the door. I have to ask you directly, she said. Has Daniel received pricing, orders, or favorable treatment? Because of a personal relationship? Shame flooded my face even though I had done nothing wrong. That was another habit Eric had trained into me, receiving his accusation as if it were evidence. No. Every quote and approval is in the system. Gail pulled up 8 months of purchasing records. Daniel's company had won some bids and lost others. On 3 occasions, I had selected a cheaper competitor. The audit cleared us in 2 days. Then Gail did something I did not expect. She documented Eric's call as harassment and instructed reception not to let him onto company property. Your private life is not a public hallway he gets to run through, she said. I went into the restroom and cried in a stall. Not because I was afraid, but because another woman had drawn a boundary for me without demanding that I first prove I deserved one. Daniel temporarily transferred our account to another representative. He said it protected both of us. I heard rejection at first, then I recognized care. He was willing to lose commission rather than let Eric weaponize his presence in my life. You don't have to do that, I told him. I know. Doesn't it bother you? Of course it bothers me. But being bothered doesn't give me the right to make your divorce harder. The distinction was so simple that it felt revolutionary. Eric had treated every feeling as permission. Daniel treated feelings as information. Vanessa's life also began coming apart, though I learned about it without looking. A mutual acquaintance sent me screenshots of her social media posts. Vanessa had written vague messages about toxic men, female jealousy, and being blamed for someone else's broken marriage. In one photograph, she wore my green dress at a rooftop bar. My first impulse was to respond publicly. I drafted a paragraph that named the hotel, the invoices, and the blanket. I imagined the satisfaction of stripping away her performance in front of everyone who had praised her strength. Then I saw what the post would cost me. Comments. Arguments. Strangers examining my pain as entertainment. Vanessa would turn facts into a debate and attention into oxygen. I deleted the draft. The next morning, she appeared outside the warehouse. She leaned against a silver sedan near the employee entrance, wearing sunglasses despite the gray sky. I stopped 10 feet away. My body reacted before my mind did, shoulders tight, heart racing, hands cold. I just want to talk, she said. My attorney has your email. This isn't about the case. Everything between us is about the case or Eric. I'm done with both. She removed the sunglasses. Without Eric beside her, she looked less polished and more tired. He lied to me, too. For one dangerous second, the old caretaker in me woke up. I almost asked what he had said. Vanessa continued. He told me you were basically separated. He said you slept in different rooms and stayed only because you couldn't afford to leave. You sat under my blanket in my living room. Her mouth tightened. You were never warm to me. The sentence was so perfectly absurd that my fear disappeared. You needed my hospitality to make your affair ethical? It wasn't an affair at first. At first. She looked toward the building, perhaps hoping someone would witness her being calm. Eric said you made him feel small. Eric feels small whenever a woman can see him clearly. Her eyes flashed. For the first time, I understood the competition from her side. She had not wanted Eric because he was extraordinary. She had wanted to become the woman for whom he would betray someone else. Being chosen over me had allowed her to feel powerful without building any power of her own. You think you won, she said. No. I think I left. I walked past her and called security from inside. She did not return. That encounter became a turning point in therapy. Until then, a part of me had imagined Vanessa as possessing some quality I lacked: softness, beauty, ease, a secret language that made Eric attentive. Seeing her alone showed me that she was trapped in the same need for his validation, only from the opposite side. My counselor asked why I had compared myself to her. Because he did. Did he compare you so he could choose the better partner, or so both women would work harder to please him? I stared at the carpet for a long time. Eric had not been choosing between us. He had been feeding on the contest. Linda called me in February. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. I found boxes in Eric's old room, she said. After losing his job, Eric had moved back into his parents' house. Linda discovered credit card statements, unopened collection letters, and printed photographs from his relationship with Vanessa. Some dated back nearly 2 years, months before he told me she had returned to Ohio. I don't know my son, Linda whispered. I felt pity, but not enough to rescue her from the truth. You knew parts of him, I said. You just kept assigning them to me. She began apologizing. She admitted that Eric had described me as rigid, suspicious, and career-obsessed. Linda had accepted his version because it matched a story she understood, a good man, neglected by an ambitious wife. She had never asked why the allegedly neglected husband spent so much time with another woman instead of repairing his marriage. I told you men were clumsy, she said. That was cowardly. Yes. The word surprised both of us. I did not soften it. Forgiveness offered too quickly becomes another way women are asked to make discomfort disappear. I am sorry, she said again. I believe you're sorry. I'm not ready to make you feel better about it. She inhaled shakily. That's fair. Months later, she mailed me a small box. Inside was my grandmother's silver serving spoon, which Eric had taken with the kitchen utensils. Linda included a note, "This belongs in the home where it was valued." I did not call her, but I kept the note. Frank's apology came differently. He asked Priya whether he could provide a statement about Eric's request for money. He documented the date, the amount, and Eric's explanation that Vanessa needed funds to escape an abusive former fiancé. The story was false. Vanessa's former fiancé lived in Phoenix and had not contacted her in over a year. Frank's statement helped establish that Eric had concealed the purpose of the money. At the end, he added one sentence not required by the case: I recognized my son's dishonesty and chose family peace over warning. Claire. That sentence mattered because it named silence as a choice. The restitution agreement forced Eric to sell his restored 1969 motorcycle, the possession he loved more openly than he had ever loved me. When he learned it would be appraised, he sent a message saying I was taking everything. I typed 4 different replies. Priya told me to send none. Eventually, Eric left a voicemail at 1:37 a.m. I know what I did was wrong, he said. But you don't understand what it felt like to have Vanessa look at me like I could be somebody. You were always tired. You always had a problem to solve. With her, I felt important. I listened twice. For years, I had believed there must be some mystery beneath his behavior, some wound that could transform cruelty into an accident. The voicemail gave me the answer. He had used my labor as a mirror and resented me when it reflected dependence. Instead of greatness, Vanessa offered admiration without responsibility. He chose the version of himself that required the least truth. Understanding him did not make him less accountable. It simply made him less mysterious. I saved the voicemail and never answered. Spring arrived unevenly. Snow lingered in dirty strips beside the parking lot while daffodils pushed through near the loading dock. I started running early in the morning, slowly at first. My lungs burned after 2 blocks. By April, I could circle the park without stopping. Each run taught me something my marriage had erased: discomfort was not always danger. Sometimes it was the body growing stronger. Daniel and I argued for the first time over a weekend trip. He wanted to visit friends in Chicago and invited me. The idea of sharing a hotel room triggered panic I could not explain. Instead of admitting that, I accused him of moving too fast. His face changed, hurt but controlled. I thought asking gave you room to say no. It does. Then say no. Don't turn me into Eric because no feels scary. The words stung because they were true. I drove home angry, then sat in my car for 20 minutes and realized respect did not mean never hearing something difficult. It meant difficulty was not used to erase me. I called him. I'm sorry. I'm not ready for the trip. Okay. And you were right. I wasn't completely right. I could have asked what made you uncomfortable instead of defending myself first. We stayed on the phone for an hour. Nobody threatened to leave. Nobody recruited an audience. Nobody won. That disagreement did more to convince me of his character than months of kindness had. Charm is easy when nothing is denied. Character appears at the first no. My promotion came with a raise large enough to qualify for a small condo. I toured 7 places, carrying a notebook and refusing to let agents rush me. The one I chose had a narrow balcony, a bright kitchen, and a living room window facing maple trees instead of brick. At closing, the lender slid a stack of documents toward me. The amount of paper reminded me of the settlement conference, and my hand began to tremble. The lender misunderstood. First home nerves? Something like that. I signed the final page and received 2 keys on a plain metal ring. That evening, my mother, Gail, Daniel, and 3 coworkers helped me move. Linda sent no message, which I appreciated. Frank mailed a hardware store gift card with no return address. I recognized his handwriting and used it to buy a new lock. When everyone left, I stood alone in the empty living room. Boxes lined the wall. The refrigerator hummed. Beyond the glass, the maple branches moved in the wind. I placed the rust-colored blanket on the floor and slept there the first night because my bed frame had not arrived. At 12:18 a.m., I woke and checked the time. Exactly a year earlier, I had been standing in a doorway while Eric told me another woman's exhaustion mattered more than my humiliation. Now I held keys to a home no one could weaponize against me. I went onto the balcony in my socks. The city was quiet, scattered with window lights. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt tenderness toward the version of me who had carried groceries into that old apartment and believed she needed a courtroom's worth of evidence to deserve respect. "You were right," I whispered to her. The words vanished into the night, but I heard them. Owning the condo did not erase what happened. It gave the healing a physical address. I chose every object slowly. A round oak table replaced the one Eric took. I hung photographs of my mother, my coworkers, and a ridiculous afternoon at the ballpark with Daniel. I left one wall empty because I no longer believed every space had to be filled immediately. On my first Sunday there, I cooked soup and carried a bowl to the balcony. My phone buzzed with a notification from an old shared photo account. The service had created a memory from 4 years earlier, Eric and me smiling beside a lake, his arm around my waist, my face turned toward him with complete trust. For a moment, grief returned with such force that I could not breathe. The marriage had not been false every second. There had been jokes, road trips, mornings when he brought coffee, nights when we planned a future. Accepting the cruelty did not require pretending the tenderness had never existed. That was what made betrayal painful, something real had been used to support something dishonest. I downloaded the photograph, placed it in a private folder, and removed myself from the shared account. I did not need to destroy the past to stop living inside it. Later, Daniel came over with a drill to help hang shelves. Before entering, he held up the tool and asked, "Are we building, or am I being evaluated as free labor?" "Both," I said. He laughed. We spent 40 minutes arguing over whether the shelf was level. The disagreement remained about the shelf. It did not become evidence that I was controlling or that he was incompetent. When we finally stepped back, the right side was visibly higher. "It has character," he said. "It has gravity." We fixed it together. That ordinary afternoon became one of my clearest definitions of love. 2 people could see the same crooked thing, disagree about how it happened, and still correct it without requiring either person to doubt their eyes. Months later, I saw Eric in a home goods store. There was no rain, no music, no dramatic collision. He was carrying 2 pillows and comparing prices. He looked older, though only a year had passed. "Claire," he said. Daniel stood several feet away with our shopping cart, studying a shelf of lamps. He did not place a marking hand on my waist. I belonged to no one. Eric. He looked at my hair, the new coat I had bought, the calmness he once mistook for surrender. "You look good." "Thank you." His gaze moved toward Daniel and then returned to me. "I know I made a mess." It was the closest thing to an honest sentence he had ever given me. "Yes," I said. "You did. I hope you're happy." I considered the word. Happy still felt too bright and complete, like a house with every room finished. But I no longer woke with my stomach clenched. I no longer needed screenshots to trust my own memory. I no longer lived with a ghost woman sitting beneath my blanket while my husband explained that I was the problem. "I'm at peace," I said. "That matters more." Outside the store, cold air filled my lungs. Daniel asked if I was all right. I said I would be, and for the first time that answer was not a wish. It was a fact in progress. I was not healed in the tidy way people describe online. Old scenes still ambushed me. Sometimes the smell of mint gum tightened my chest. Sometimes I grew angry at the woman I had been, the woman who apologized for noticing, who reheated dinner after being insulted, who tried to become easier to love. Therapy taught me to stop punishing her. She had survived with the tools she possessed. She had kept notes until she could build a door. My mother visited that spring. We sat on my repainted living room floor eating takeout because the new sofa had not arrived. She rubbed the edge of the rust-colored blanket between her fingers. "I should have asked more questions," she said. "He was good at looking kind from far away." "So were you," she replied. "You made pain look like patience." I leaned against her shoulder and let that truth settle. Eric had spent years telling me that my perception was a defect. Vanessa had treated my marriage like a contest because she believed being chosen made her valuable. His parents had mistaken silence for neutrality. Even I had believed dignity had to arrive as a dramatic act. But dignity first appeared as a locked note on my phone. Then as a question asked aloud in a restaurant. Then as one small yes when Daniel offered to stay. Then as contractor bags beside a sofa. Then as 14 signatures beneath fluorescent light. The best revenge was not Vanessa rejecting Eric. It was not his lost job, his restitution debt, or the moment his mother finally saw him clearly. Those consequences belonged to his choices. My revenge was quieter. I learned to hear my own voice before anyone else had approved it. I learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the absence of someone constantly rewriting your reality. I learned that love never requires you to become confused so another person can remain innocent. One rainy night nearly a year after I came home to find Vanessa under my blanket, the front door stuck again. I pushed it open with my shoulder and stepped into a home lit by a single warm lamp. The apartment smelled like basil and fresh paint. My shoes were wet. My hands were tired. No one told me I was making the room miserable. I hung up my coat, wrapped myself in the rust-colored blanket, and listened to the rain strike the window. For 6 years, I had thought silence meant loneliness. That night, silence sounded like my life returning to me.